Hello.
Hello, am I on? I'm on, she's on, and now you can't stop me. I've got you for a good few hours. Welcome to Fusion, everybody. Woo! It's really good to have everyone back. Lots of new faces, which is always really, really good to see. We've got a full house tonight, which is great. Yay! So thank you everyone for coming. So just some bits and bobs from me, as per. So we have got a code of conduct for our event. It is on our website. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, we just ask, be kind, be respectful of others. If you see any behaviour that you don't feel comfortable with, that you're not happy with, please grab one of the Fusion team who will put their hands up now. I was like, you're all hiding at the back. Indy, thank you. There we go. Okay, if you would like to read the code of conduct again, please go to the website. So on to our sponsors for this evening. Infobip, yet again, are joining us for another year, which is amazing. They've been such an incredible support to Fusion. I'm sure all of you are so familiar with seeing their logo here. We had a great swag competition in November. Who won that? Anyone here? Did you get the socks? Oh, so jealous of the someone got. I mean, there was like Lego and really cool stuff, but I just wanted the socks. I didn't get the socks. You didn't get this. Oh, damn! After the socks, Mike, memo over some socks for Hannah. I'll get some socks. If you're lucky, you play nice. Okay, so on that note, I'm going to intro Mike. He's part of the Fusion team, but he's also one of the Infobip team. So I'm going to hand him over for the Infobip competition. Round of applause for Mike Ellsmore.
QR code. Oh, excellent. Right, okay. That's a big QR code. So if you have a smartphone that uses WhatsApp, you'll be getting a prize. The prize is this wonderful thing, which is a custom mechanical keyboard for thee. So those of you who don't use WhatsApp, I'm sorry, I can't be bothered to do it any other way. But yes, so hands up, who's new to Fusion? Holy living hell. Where the hell have you been for the last, 8 years? But okay, so Hannah and Andy, the gods behind Fusion, I'm one of their minions, and I'm here representing Infobip. Infobip is the world's largest communications platform as an API thing. So what you're using is WhatsApp bot built on all our tech, and if you are, sorry, those on stream, you can't win the keyboard, but if you come into the Discord, I will send you something because I've been given permission to do that. But yes, that's us. Thank you very much. Please do that because just as an FYI, if you engage with sponsors, they're more likely to give money to other events. Yay! So there we go.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike. Anyway, has everyone grabbed it? Who wants to? I'll stick it back up on the screen again a little bit later. Are we running this till the end, Mike? Are we running it till the end?
Oh, yes. They will tell you. Oh, I don't even need the microphone.
It's so loud.
Congratulations to you in roughly 2 hours.
Great. I'm guessing everyone definitely heard that. Okay. So the sponsor this evening are Jardu. I've got a lot I could say about Jardu. So for those of you who haven't noticed yet, and I've spoken to so many of you, I have started the role of the head of talent acquisition and community at Jardu. It's a company that I've hired for nearly 16 years. It's a very, very long time. And I've always loved working with them. And so I was so lucky to have the opportunity to take this position at Jardu. They're now sponsoring Fusion for this event and the next event. There's so much that I could say about the company. I did try and invite some of the team up. Robin, still not having it? Do you want to take the stage? No. So we're at the beginning of a really, really exciting journey. We are on a mission to be the world's most accessible digital platform, which is topical because we have Bruce talking about accessibility this evening. And I know quite a few of you are kind of accessibility specialists and you're interested in it. So that's absolutely our bag. I'm just going to do a little cheeky shout out here because I can. And I'm the one with the microphone. At Jardu, we are hiring. Yay! Okay. So we are. Thanks, Bryson. So we're hiring for PHP engineers. We've got a whole host of other roles. So I am the best person to talk to if you're looking for a new career and want to chat about whether that would sit with Jardu. Okay, so on to our next slide. So I got really tired. Can you tell the design skills on this slide? Absolute minimum, sorry. So we are looking for sponsors, we're looking for speakers, we want people to blog. If you want to be involved in the tech community, we want to hear from you. As Mike said, without sponsorship, our events just won't happen. They just can't exist without the sponsorship. And it's really, really important. At the moment, we've got so many amazing meetups in the Birmingham tech community and the surrounding areas that need support, whether that's through sponsorship or speakers. We are also looking for event space. So this QR code will take you to our website. If you go onto the contact form and drop us a message if you'd like to get involved in any way, shape or form, whether that's with Fusion or the tech community, then please get in touch with us and we'd love to hear for you. And remember, your support really means absolutely everything. So you'll notice that there's no cupcakes this evening. It's because we haven't got enough sponsors. So if you would like your company's logo on the cupcakes, I would say take a picture of the cupcakes, but you don't have any. There's loads of Jardu merch and swag. So take a photo of your time here at Fusion and just don't forget to use the hashtag for Twitter. Okay, on to introducing some of our partners. As always, we like to give these people a shout out. We work really, really closely with them throughout the city, throughout the tech community. This one down here, for those who aren't familiar, this is actually Birmingham Design Festival, and they've released their date for the actual conference, which is on June the 6th to the 8th, and it's incredible. It's celebrating all these amazing things that we have in Birmingham, and that could be anything from art, that could be anything from UX, graphics, anything like that. So it's definitely well worth keeping an eye out for. Another shout out to our fellow meetup organisers. Again, we wouldn't have a community without these people. I know we've got a few of them here this evening, so thanks for coming along. It's always wonderful to have you all. Just to run through a few of the upcoming meetups. So we have got the .NET meetup, very efficient. I wish I was as organised as you. You planned your events up until May the 8th, which is amazing. So take a screenshot, use the QR code. It's at BJSS for every single one, isn't it? Yay, woohoo, BJSS. Manage Ops Meetup is back. I think there was one already this year. So they've got Max from GitLab, who we actually have speaking at the following Fusion. He's doing a different talk, so please come back. Again, this is basically as far as my design skills go. We've got the Golang Meetup on March the 21st. Again, it's at BJSS. Tom's on his own at the back. Don't worry, Tom. So Women in Tech, I just want to say a big thank you on behalf of Women in Tech Birmingham, because I put a tweet out last week about how much support they needed. They didn't have any sponsorship behind them at all. And following my tweet, there was like 5 separate companies that had contacted me to say that they wanted to sponsor the event. They could offer event space, which is amazing. So this is just a really, really big thank you from Women in Tech Birmingham. So thank you, everyone. And finally, I will get off stage soon, I promise. School of Code. So School of Code are looking for to see if anyone has junior engineer opportunities. Now, this is either within your organisation or if you have any project opportunities for them. So is there a little thing that you could actually send to School of Code for their engineers to get cracking on that maybe you don't have time or capacity to do within your organisation? If so, again, if you get in touch with me, or you can get in touch with us via the Fusion contact form, it would be great. More support for those, the better. Shout out to the School of Code people, please. Where are you? Yay! New talent coming into tech. Well done for all the hard work so far. They're doing an amazing job. I've been lucky enough to meet some of cohort 14 and 15. So it's great to have you here this evening. Oh, you'll all be breathing a sigh of relief. I'm off stage. So we're going to start the talks. We're going to do 2 and then have a break, and then we'll go on to the final talk. There will be a little bit of crossover between speakers, so if you need to go to the toilet, grab a drink, whatever you need to do, there'll be a couple of minutes there. So I'm going to hand over to our first speaker, who is Dave from ASOS. He's now a lead software engineer. Well done, Dave. Congrats on the... Woo! Come on, Dave. Right, over to Dave. I love the ASOS. You're all over there. Say, woo!
Good. Technical difficulties already. It's just a photo of space. It's all my... Is my mic? Am I now? How about now? Can I have your microphone?
Would you like my microphone? I know Vicky obviously doesn't want to give you the power.
Cool. Right. So here we go. I'm Dave Megins-Nicholas, and I'm a lead software engineer at ASOS here in Birmingham as part of the anti-fraud pro-tax team. We call it fraud and tax, but that's ambiguous. And I'm going to talk to you about what we can learn from real engineers. In the past, I've worked on optometry devices that are sort of remotely controlled over the internet. Think Internet of Things stuff, and lots of manufacturing software for aerospace components. So I spent a fair lot of time in cowsheds looking at turbines. It's not very exciting. And yet, I'm not a real engineer. And I know this, but there's also a lot of debate about what we call ourselves. People call themselves coders and developers and programmers and crafters. And I'm going to sidestep that whole debate because it says software engineer on my contract. But yeah, I know I'm not a real engineer because my partner Ellie over there tells me all the time, every day. Because civil engineers are real engineers. And Ellie's a civil engineer, which makes her a real engineer, and she's a chartered civil engineer. And what does it mean to be chartered? I know some people in tech don't really know what that is. They've just heard the words. Basically, professions, some of them have professional bodies who exist and have the legal mandate to make you jump through hoops to prove you can do your job. They then put you on an official list, and then that tells the world that you can do your job. So think accountants, lawyers, dentists, doctors, all people you want to trust know how to do their job. There's an interesting thing about engineers, or the term engineers, in that it's not a protected term like doctor. So anyone in the UK can call themselves an engineer, and I do. But that's not true everywhere. My partner's Canadian, technically, and she can't call herself an engineer in Canada because she's not associated with the Canadian Institute of Civil Engineers. She's associated with the one in the UK because she's technically Canadian. So what do you have to do to become a chartered civil engineer? Well, you need a master's degree from an accredited university. Basically, that's 4 years at, an accredited institution. Basically, that's 4 years at a university. Then you need experience. They call this initial professional development. I call it doing your job. And then they make you write they make you write a 5,000-word essay where you detail all the things you've done that meet the attributes that the institute demand you do as part of your job. Then you send it off, they mark it and interview you and ask you loads of questions about it. So, quite a lot. Why am I picking on civil engineers, other than the fact I live with one? While Ellie was practicing and studying for her chartership exam, I was studying along with her, so I could ask her awkward questions about standards and contract law at every hour of the day. But it got me thinking that actually in tech, we're really quite similar to civil engineers in a couple of ways. And I've got some quotes from the Institute of Civil Engineers, which I will hope illustrate that point. So, the Institute of Civil Engineers, the ICE, exists to improve lives by ensuring the world has the engineering capacity and infrastructure systems it needs to enable our planet and people to thrive. Well, that's kind of what we do in software. We make up things on computers and let you run banks and make trading platforms and access government services. It's all just digital stuff, right? But it's still helping people thrive. And then this one is the one that made me think of the talk, really, is that the ICE exists to lead the debate around infrastructure and the built environment and provide an unmatched level of training, knowledge, and thinking. Am I waggling this around? Cool. The built environment, right? Because civil engineers think about the built environment in a very physical sense. They think like bridges and railways and embankments and smart motorways, which have software in them, I suppose. But we kind of do the same thing, right? We build imaginary things in computers and people use them to live their lives. And sometimes they're safety critical and they, you fly planes made with software that made bits of planes and took an eye exam controlled by a computer, those sorts of things. So there's kind of an overlap that got me thinking. But maybe it's good that we're not real engineers and I get to say, yeah, I'm an engineer and then not get chartered. That's pretty cool. But that's good because the lack of formal requirements means that it opens up tech to a more diverse group of people with different backgrounds and perspectives. Hopefully there's lots of those here tonight. And they can bring a depth of experience that lets us deliver the best solution. Next, tech moves really fast. Turns out concrete technology moves really quickly, but nowhere near as fast as software. So it raises the question, what would you teach in a 4-year master's software engineering course? I know they exist, right? But I didn't do one. And I still got here, and I'm a lead. So they're clearly not required. But it raises the question, do you teach the latest fads and frameworks, which might be out of fashion 4 years later? I'm looking at you, lots of JavaScript frameworks there. Or do you teach computation from the ground up and live like computer scientists of yore, and then you get to industry and go, how do I do anything? How do I deliver value? How do I raise GDP doing this? So yeah, what does that look like? Probably like a boot camp, I think, maybe. And also standards. Engineers love standards, real engineers. We love standards, maybe too much, because there's that XKCD comic about it. But what would we choose to teach them? Would we teach them industry-specific standards like PCI compliance or boring ISO standards? We can't really agree on tabs versus spaces, Emacs versus Vim, or whether or not light mode is even required. So we don't really know what we do there, but there's another requirement to becoming a chartered civil engineer, which I have neglected for narrative purposes. They have to do continuous professional development. I got you all to come to a talk on CPD. Welcome. Engineers must undertake CPD, and it's audited. People check it. You have to keep a record of it. There's no minimum requirement for how much you have to do, but if you've done none and your record is empty, that doesn't look very good. Good news, we're doing it right now. Welcome to CPD. CPD also looks like these things, which we also do. Mentoring, communities of practices or guilds, workshops or conferences, and certification, those sorts of things. Well, there's also stuff you can do on your own and get a company, and I think ASOS does that really well, and that's really what I'm here to talk about, is how you can copy us, because I'm going to tell you. So I think broadly there are like two themes of thing I'm going to talk about. There's ones that you can organize right now, wait until the break or the pub, not right now. And then there's things you might need help with, unless you're the boss, and then you can do it in the pub anyway. So first thing is Code Gym. Now, this is like the first introduction I had to CPD at work at ASOS. And think leak code, advent of code, code wars, but with a bit of a spin, a bit of an ASOS spin. So basically, Rich, who sat over there, set up a meeting and just invited everyone. Just said, hey, come and write some code for an hour a week at 1 p.m. on a Monday. And we pick a kata, we've got a library of them and it's growing, and then we solve it. And we do that in pairs. We randomly allocate pairs to everyone in the meeting, and they're pseudo-random. Don't know if this might be some news to people who've done it before, but it's intentionally picked to break up teams and to break up levels of seniority. So you get that knowledge sharing in both directions. I like this because I get to tell people to use Rider as their IDE of choice over Visual Studio, because it's crap. Then they break off into their own little meetings, solve the problem with pair programming and test-driven development and whatever they want, and then they regroup at the end and discuss the solution and what they found hard, what they found, useful or new. And then sometimes, if it's feeling a little bit stale, we might put a spin on it again and say, solve it in a functional way. We write a lot of object-oriented code, not so much functional, so give that a spin. Maybe just do the domain modeling. Don't even write some code, just think about objects and what's going on and get really deep, like a greybeard. Or solve it in a language you've not used before. So that's where I first used Go. I just loaded a REPL and then solved a little kata. There's two pieces of advice. Oh, no. Bad PowerPoint. Come back. I'm very breathy, I'm sorry. Go. Oh, I just love code. Right, there's two pieces of advice. Number one is repeat kata, because kata comes from martial arts, and you don't just practice one punch once. So come back and do them again. Maybe not the same one every week, but actually come back and do it again. Try it a different way. And the other one is to remind people that it exists. I think this is one that we have to do when things get busy, so over Christmas or summer holidays, or if it's been Black Friday and you've been working on optimizing to get the best performance. Sometimes it slips by the wayside. You just have to remind people that it exists. Number two, examples of things. I'll go a little bit quicker, I think. It's taking a bit longer. Sports and game scoring, taking the input of some score sheet and then outputting the result. Turns out in software we don't know how to play sport or score it that well, so that's pretty fun. I really enjoyed maze solving. So take a 2D array of ones and zeros that represents a maze and then solve it. Go for easy brute force approaches or complicated graph ones and solve some massive mazes. If you're not feeling algorithmy, there's lots of refactoring puzzles. So there's this excellent one on GitHub called Gilded Rose, which is a World of Warcraft themed RPG shop, which backend is in dire need of tests. So your job is to refactor it to have tests. There's this one game called Zendo. When I've rehearsed this, I go off on one about how to play it, but basically it's an inductive logic puzzle. There's a link to the physical board game of it. Basically, we play it with numbers where someone sets a rule and doesn't tell people what the rule is, and then people have to guess strings of numbers that might fit the rule, and they keep going around and around with the person who set the rule telling them yay or nay. And eventually you get one chance to say, I think all of the numbers are prime. And then if you get it right, congratulations, you scored a point. If you didn't, rotate around. That one's great to run on Teams because it's just an entire chat of just people typing numbers. It looks like some daft like Soviet numbers station. It's fantastic. Right, number 2, working groups. This is really simple. Takes a little bit more work, but find something you're passionate about and you think other people are passionate about in the company, and just, again, put a meeting in the calendar. No one's going to stop you. And then tack on a thing for a while. I think it's important to pick something that's not feature related. So we've got kind of 3 things I'll talk about. We've got service templating, which is kind of like platform engineering. We had a talk about a year ago, automating lots of boilerplate code. There's a system now where you can like fill in some details in a web form of like, I want an API, I want a database, I want authentication, and it spins up a repo, a pipeline, infrastructure, alerting, and you don't have to write any code. I lied, I don't like code. We've got an excellent dashboard working group, and they're driving like making best practices for dashboards. So what all of our dashboards should look like, making them consistent and performant so that we're best prepared for peak, which is really useful. And then there's the contract testing group, which was, I think my watch is telling me my heart's dying. It's pretty cool. No, a QA read about contract testing in the next subject, in the next thing, and then said, hey, we could do that, spun up a working group, made some proof of concepts, and then now we're starting to put them into pipelines to make sure we don't break the contracts we have with our consumers. The QA read about contract testing in book club. Read books. This is my favorite one because I love reading non-fiction books. I like books about space and history and code. Basically, stick another meeting in. You're getting a theme here. Make a poll. People suggest some books. You vote on them, and then you read them like a chapter at a time, and then you discuss things about them. It's really good. It's a nice way to, especially in like a hybrid or remote sense, talk to your workmates about not work, but kind of work on billable time. It's good. If you're struggling for themes, I think these are sort of the 3 broad ones you can get away with. So technology-specific things. Is there something you want to use at work, but you don't know anything about it? Put it in the poll and vote for it. There's ones about architecture. So, you know, is there some architecture you want to move to? Do you want to learn about event-driven microservices? Loads of books on that. It's really good. I like ones on processes because there's no code. So if you're doing agile, read a book about something that's not agile. Read a book about something that's not agile. Is the line there. Read about Kanban or extreme programming or anything by Kent Beck, Kanban or Lean. So some examples of things we've read. If you're feeling cheap, we've got the Google SRE book, which is fantastic. That's driven a lot of our SLO alerting strategies. Mike and Grace, who's over here, ran a talk on that a while back, and it was excellent. There's also Professor Frisbee's Mostly Adequate Guide to Functional Programming, which is a wonderful interactive book on GitHub, which takes you from the basics of what is a function. I can pass it around to monads and monoids. I thought monoids were a thing from the Doctor Who in the 60s, but apparently mathematicians love it. Melted my brain. But my 2 favorite ones that we've read is Code That Fits in Your Head by Mark. Oh, this is not an ASOS recommendation. This is me. Code That Fits in Your Head by Mark Seaman. That's a good way of starting a new project or taking over a project and maintaining a sustainable pace of development. So it goes from really simple stuff like turn on Git, make a checklist. The best one in that is set warnings as errors so that you never get that like huge screen of errors and you're like, oh, I'll never fix that. Because if they're errors, you can tell the business it's broken and you can fix it. That's wild. And then there's Monoliths to Microservices by Sam Newen, which is about, it's a little bit more dry, but it's patterns for splitting up your monoliths into microservices. Duh. The best bit in that is it tells you when you should bother trying to do it. Because I love a book that tells me you've read it and don't bother doing anything. It's fine. That's good. The next section is on things you might need help with. This is stuff that you need the business to help you with because it requires sign-off. We run this thing called Tech Develops. This is our email. It's very vibrant. This is a link to a podcast where we go on about it a lot. It's good. You should listen to it for the numbers, for the algorithm. Basically, the last Friday of every month, engineers, everyone in tech is released from delivering features, and they can do whatever they want, whatever CPD they want. And that can be catching up on book club. I've done that. That can be making new katas for Code Club. That can be, I don't know, whatever you want. There's a space where you can say, hey, I'm working on this, come and join me. And then you can hack on something. We hacked on a support tool, which we nabbed the idea from the Monzo talk a while back. I was in there like, yeah, we need that. And then we had to go at it. It's really hard, but push the needle a little bit. I don't recommend you doing Advent of Code problems for 8 hours, because that's an exam for 8 hours. It's not good. I was very tired, didn't enjoy it. Bad Friday in January. We also invite external speakers in to come and talk. So we've had Microsoft in to we're a Microsoft house, so they come along and they talk about Microsoft things like chaos testing and all that jazz. We recently had Databricks in to talk about big data and data lakes, which is very interesting because I know how to do that as a lead. And there's an episode of the Tech Podcast where people talk about what they've done. 20% time. Now, this isn't really CPD. It benefits from CPD, and lots of companies do it. Basically, 20% of our development time is set aside for not delivering features, but for improving our systems and processes. In my previous team, ASOS are laughing about how much we do this. In my previous team, in theory, we had 2 days a fortnight set aside to do improvement stories. Improvement stories are very vague intentionally, so we can do what we want. So we replaced Postman with Rider's HTTP client. Go Rider, boo Postman. When they enshittified Postman, that was born from a tech develops proof of concept. We tried porting a service from Service Fabric, boo, to Kubernetes, yay! And this built on some of the work that Rich had done and others, Rich and Ed, is Ed here? No, on making that pathway really, really easy. And then it goes to even more simple things. So like Rory removed all the stringified code in one of our solutions. It was great. I went on a hatchet job to remove this ancient testing library that was unsupported. And it was bad, it was ugly. But I just did it in the 20% time. And it made our lives better, but justifying that in priorities of just looks nicer now. It's good. And then we have improvements to our monitoring. So I've been working on alerts for when our alerts stop working because we've stopped ingesting logs. That comes out of the Google SRE book. Is that enough? Do you want a second breakfast? Are you a hobbit? Well, we also run courses on the entire stack that we use in the back end, which is wild. So we can go from no.NET to knowing loads of .NET, becoming a software crafter, so learning extreme programming techniques, patterns, then learning about deployment pipelines, how to make them, how to leverage ASOS's internal toolings, you don't have to repeat it. Then you learn how to containerize your apps, then learn how to put those apps in Kubernetes, and then learn how to get Kubernetes from Azure, and it's all sort of run by people in the company who give up some time every quarter to run a course. And you have to have help with this because you need to make the courses. We had help with .NET and AKS because they're all Microsoft things. But then you have to have people who know their stuff be able to take the time out of feature delivery in order to teach people for 3 days. You also have to be able to have people who want to learn be able to take time out of feature delivery to do the course, to do better feature delivery. But be realistic. I'm not saying you can do all of these things right away. It's taken absolutely years for us to get here. But I think you should start small and then take some ideas and run with them. You're not getting away without one more quote. This one is, share your knowledge because that's how we as an industry make progress, from Charles Humble. I think that's what we do at ASOS. I hope I've done that this evening, and I know you will do too. Whew. That was terrifying. Any questions? No, that's great. Doesn't work for you either. Do you want that?
No, yeah. Nope, okay. Right, Dave, you can do you can stand the lectern. Right, thank you, Dave. I'm always tempted to call you Mega Slippers. I know. It's Twitter. It just ruins everyone's name, doesn't it? Thanks, Dave. That was wonderful. Catch your breath. Catch your breath. You did so good. You did so good. Really, really good. Right, we're going to run to, okay, so we're going to go a quick Q&A now. So has anyone got any questions for Dave? Anyone, any questions? Have we got any? Oh, there is. Oh, okay. Hold on. So, the first question's always at the back. Okay. Making me work. Yes. Okay.
Cheeky question. Would you consider becoming a chartered IT professional?
No.
Fair enough.
Yeah, sorry. No, thank you. Thank you, Jess. I've looked at it, and places that really value you doing it pay for you to do it. I've never found anywhere that would say, we'll pay for you to do this from company money. So no. And I've never wanted to apply for a job that has required it. So like I didn't do a software engineering degree.
Cool.
Oh,
Okay.
It was, would I ever consider doing an IT chartership exam?
Done. Next. Oh, behind. Oh, there's two. Okay, Aaron.
If I speak into, I can reply this way.
Hello.
It's very low. Hello.
You had talked a lot about like what we can learn from chartered engineers. Do you think there's also stuff maybe as an industry can learn from chartered engineers in terms of who is responsible when people die from your work?
Oh, that's big. Yes, but it's beyond the scope of this talk.
I look forward to part 2.
Okay, any more? Yeah.
Hi, I have a question because I'm in a situation where I'm in a position to upskill people, and you listed a lot of activities around upskilling, like reading books and pair programming, etc. What do you think in ASOS was the best thing that you think upskill people as programmers?
Of the ones I've mentioned, and they're the ones I think are the most important, I think book club. Not necessarily for reading the books, but because of the discussions the books drive. You get to learn a lot about other people's perspectives from every company they've ever worked at, what went well with that. Yeah, so I'd say it's the discussions that some of these things drive with people who have different experiences to you, more senior or just different.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Oh, okay, any more? Indeed, did you have one? Sorry, don't want to put you on the spot or anything. So, no? Pub question. Okay. Anyone else?
We're going to Cozy Club.
I know. Yeah. Surprise. We're so boring. We just do the same thing every time. Okay, cool. We all do any questions on the live stream? Aaron? No questions. Cool. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks very much.
Okay, so next up we've got Jen Beattie, who is Head of Engineering at GivePanel. Jen's going to be talking to us about strategies for empowering women in tech. So big round of applause for Jen.
Please talk amongst yourselves.
This is where I wish I was like a stand-up comedian. I could just bust out a joke. I'm not funny. I've got no sense of humour. It's terrible. Terrible.
You need like some like lounge music.
Yeah.
Like you're in a lift. Oh wow. Ah, you got the wrong bit. How do I? Technical difficulties. How on earth do you put the other bit back? Any ideas, anyone?
Dave,
Give me that. There we go. Dee-lee-dee-lee-dee. Okay, I think we're good. Are we good? If I click this button, does it? It does. Huzzay. So, yeah, empowering strategies for empowering women in tech. So, why am I here standing in front of all you lovely people talking about this? one, I want to share my story. I want to tell you guys how I managed to get into tech with 0 technical qualifications and why I'm still here. 2, raising awareness. The gender gap is still a massive issue, and there are, funnily enough, people who have absolutely no idea about it. So yeah. Number 3, help educate. So I want to be a role model for other women and other tech leaders of the future. And then the final one, provide some actions. So some simple things that anybody here can go away and start doing tomorrow. Some fun facts about me to start with. I am 37 years old. I am currently training for a powerlifting competition. And I'm hoping that by saying this to you all now, you are going to hold me accountable and I'm actually going to enter one. So pray for me. I am also the proud owner of Keith the Corgi. He is 2 years old and he is adorably cute. So where did I begin my journey into tech? So it probably began at GCSE level. I couldn't fit GCSEs on the slides, so we started A-level. But back then, 20 years ago, there wasn't really a huge amount of encouragement for women or young girls to go into tech. So it's kind of like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I have no idea. 0, like, ideas what I wanted to be. I did, when I was very little, wanted to be a vet. Then I realized it took how many years, 6 years, 7 years, ridiculous amount. I was like, oh no, thanks. So what do you do when you don't know where to go? And the things that you're interested in at the time isn't really an option as a career. So I was really into my computers, into my tech, into my gadgets and stuff. Didn't really know that I could go into programming as a woman. Wasn't really a thing. You've got an IT guy. It's always your IT guy, never your IT woman. So what did I do? I did my A-levels in subjects that I just enjoyed. So I got an A-level in art and design, and home economics. That was basically food tech, so baking. I finished my A-levels, and then again, what am I going to do now? I have no idea what I want to do with my career. I really wanted to go into sort of design tech and that kind of route, but I never got that option at A-level because there were only 2 students that wanted to do it, and it wasn't something that they would offer. So again, did a degree in something that I thought I'd enjoy, and I did. I started my degree in fashion, switched to fine art. It took about 6 years to do it because, again, no career aspirations, no guidance, no how do I get into tech at a young age. So I finished my degree finally in 2011, and then I got stuck. So where do you go when you don't know how to get into tech and you've got no technical qualifications? Unpaid work. So you start looking at job specs and you're like, great, I'll go for a complete entry-level degree, no experience. What can I apply for? And you start looking around and there isn't anything. Or they all want 5 years experience in HTML, CSS, Java, the next thing, this, that, and the other. So I ended up applying for a web design role with a small company, unpaid, and I had to jump through hoops to get there. Submit a video, tell us why you want to have this job, all the things that you really don't want to be doing for an unpaid piece of work. Now, the good news is I got the job, and I started unpaid, and then after the first month, they were like, we really love you, we're going to take you on full-time and pay you. Great, foot in the door, perfect. Unfortunately, at the end of 2012, I ran into some personal issues and moved back to my hometown of Bristol. So I then had to essentially start again from the beginning. So now I've got 6 months experience in web design, which is great, but I've also got nothing else. That's it. A degree in fine art and 6 months experience, and I need to pay the bills. So I took a job in admin, in financial services. Very boring, but it paid the money, so it was great. Now, interestingly enough, in that role, during my induction, it was sort of a round table where you had to say your name and why you wanted this job or why you wanted to work at this company. And I was like, well, my name's Jen, and I don't really want to work here. I just need the money. I want to be a web developer. And funny enough, there was a chap sat next to me who had just got a job as a web developer. He goes, why don't you apply here? So what? It's like, yeah, they're looking for developers. I'm like, what kind? Well, PHP. So obviously, web design, no PHP, all front end. And he kept badgering me to apply. And so I did. And a year later, I got a job as a junior web developer at this financial services company, and I worked my way up to a PHP developer, full developer, so like mid-level. Now, the one thing that I had in this role was a mentor. So somebody to tell me that I'm good, somebody to boost my confidence and say, hey, do you know what? You can do it. You have got the skills, and you can go far. He was my champion. He was my team leader, and he kept pushing me to go further. He branched out 4 years later, and I followed him. He was that good at being a mentor. So we ended up working together for about 7 years until I thought, right, I've got to step out from underneath your umbrella. And I joined another company in 2020 for a short time before joining where I am now at GivePanel in 2021 as a full stack developer. Pretty straightforward, yeah? Sounds like everyone's kind of, oh, I got stuck at the beginning, I don't have experience, like everyone's had the problem, I don't have 5 years experience. Yeah? Could it have been easier? Yes. Could I have known at a young age as a girl that tech was open to me? Could I have been shunted in that direction, had guidance to get into tech early on? Would I have had all those struggles at the beginning? Probably not. Had all those tech initiatives that are going on now, the code school stuff, sorry, I forgot the name, had that all been there 20 years ago, we'd probably not have stats like these now. So 26% of people working in tech are women, so a quarter. It's not much. And of that 26%, only 5% are in leadership positions. It's pretty low. And then again, of that 26%, half of them leave tech by the time they're 35. I'm still here, 37. So why is it so difficult? So it goes back to education. So the lack of education at the beginning. So we're not teaching young girls that tech is cool. Tech is cool. But it's like, no girl's going to find that fun, are they? Like, what are they learning in school that you're teaching them? It needs to be fun. It needs to be educated. It needs to be aimed towards girls, and it's not. Gender bias. So 76% of women have experienced gender bias in the workplace. Still going on, and it's a lot. Pay gap. Still got the pay gap. 16% in the UK. And then finally, the very taboo one that takes a lot of courage to stand up in front of all of you people here and talk about is female health, periods, and menopause. We need to provide more support. So how can we change it? I narrowed this down to 3 categories. There is a lot more than this, but for the purposes of the talk and not going on for hours on end, we've got 3 categories. So role models, making women in tech more visible. Recruitment, updating recruitment processes, removing the gender bias. And finally, retention. Once you've got those women in your company, how do you keep them? How do you keep those people past the age of 35 in your company? So the first one, role models. When asked to name a role model who has inspired them to pursue a career in technology, 83% of females find it impossible to do so. I am one of those 83%. I cannot name anybody in the tech industry that I, sort of 10 years ago, would look up to and say, I want to be like that person. No one in the media. You just don't really see them. So how can we change that? Make women more visible, promote more women, even do a shout out on LinkedIn. Anybody that you've got in your network that's a woman in tech, stuff it on LinkedIn. Hey, we've got this great woman, check her out. Simple, but easy, and people will see. So just going back slightly to the thing I mentioned about making it accessible in schools, I was in a round table just before Christmas, I think, actually. And I mentioned making tech more accessible in schools, and they're like, oh yeah, but it's boring. And I'm like, well, make it fun. Make it so they want to learn. And then they go, oh, I can see that lady. She's a great female leader. I want to be like that person. Mummy, I want to learn about tech. And that's what we need. And then mentoring. I had a great mentor throughout my years at the financial services company. Had I not had that, I don't think I would be where I am now. Shout out to Graham McCann. He honestly pushed me so far, and he was the reason I am where I am now. And yeah, I've got to support that in every way I can. So we're going to do a bit of a test. Hands up, who knows this person? Cool. Yeah, it's good old Bill Gates. Hands up who knows this person. Ooh, one. Nice. This is Sarah Bond. She's the president of Xbox. What I would want is for the same number of hands to go up for Sarah Bond as they did for Bill Gates. But why? Because there's no visibility. Nobody's seen her in the media, no one's seen her in the news, but yet she's in a really high-profile role. Why don't we know? So, number 2, recruitment. Women are less likely to apply if they don't tick every box in the job description, whereas men will apply even if they only tick half. So this goes back again to my applying for that role as a PHP developer. I would not have applied for that role had that chap not encouraged me to do so. Because I didn't have the skills. I wasn't at the point that I'd look at that job description, I'd immediately go, nope, nope, nope. And I think that's one of the problems at the moment, is that people want a ridiculous amount of experience in a specific thing, and especially in the tech industry where you've got people looking for a specific tech stack. Once you know JavaScript, you know all those frameworks. They're all really the same thing, just as a different wrapper. So why do you need specifics of this particular thing? And it's, as a woman, knowing to ignore that. So if you haven't got all the skills, but you love the job and you think you'd be a really great fit, apply anyway. You've got absolutely nothing to lose. And one of the things that really put me off applying for roles is computer science degree. Now, I do not have a computer science degree. I have a degree in fine art. Absolutely no relevance whatsoever. And yet here I am as head of engineering with an extremely good technical knowledge of how things work. So it just goes to show you don't need a technical background to be able to do the role. Removing gender bias. I'm not going to read that out. But removing gender bias and using online tools to do so. So even if you don't know what gender bias looks like in a job description, which is in the next slide, you can use ChatGPT. Or if you just Google gender decoder, stuff your job advert in there, it will decode it for you. No, my little thing's broken. It's because I've got a software update on here. Hang on a minute, please. There we go. So just as examples, because people might not know what gendered language is, and everyone says, oh, remove gendered, like male gendered words. I'm like, well, I don't know what they are. So most commonly used male gendered words: lead, analyze, competitive, active, confident. Very harsh, like solid words. And then the female gendered words: support, responsible, understanding, dependable, committed. Quite rounded, more softer. And these are the kind of things that we need to swap. And that's going to get more women looking at your job adverts and going, oh, yeah, okay, I can do that. Sweet. And the last one, retention. So 63% of women place flexible working in their top 3 benefits, which would attract them to a job. Now, this is where, though, 50% of women leave the industry by the age of 35, and that's primarily due to childcare. So women are still primary caregivers, and they would benefit most from flexible and remote working. That's not to say men don't help. They do a lot, and people are fighting more for paternity rights. But women are still the primary caregivers. And having things like async working, no meetings from 2 to 4 for the school run, really, really simple things that your company can implement now that would make it super, super, super useful for a woman juggling a full-time job and kids. And then workplace culture. So the use of inclusive terms like confident instead of bossy. Detail-orientated instead of nitpicky. And encouraging women to speak and voice their opinions. Anyone ever been in a Zoom meeting where you can see somebody's trying to get a word in edgeways and just being talked over? It's just giving that saying and say, hey, that person, they've got a point, can you let them speak, please? Stuff like that. Really simple stuff that you guys can go and do tomorrow. And then probably the most taboo of all of them, female health support. Periods and menopause. Most women have periods. It's no new thing. 85% of people who menstruate experience stress or anxiety when managing their periods at work. It's a bit, slightly easier now with COVID, and there's a lot more remote working. You can hide a lot of stuff behind a screen. But if you imagine being in an office, now that people are doing like hybrid working, you've got to go back into the office. You've got your periods, you're a bit emotional, you see a picture of a cute cat, burst into tears. It's a bit embarrassing, right? And if you don't have a company that's supportive of that, you're not going to really stay there, are you? And then once you've had your kids, let's say you're in your 30s, people are having kids a lot later. In your 30s, you're juggling your childcare and your work life, and then you've got menopause. Winner. Well, I say that, you've got perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause, menomenopause, all menopause. But yeah, 73% of women say that employers are not doing enough to support employees at work during the menopause. So let's say you're a woman, you're in a meeting full of like executives, you've got menopause, you've got hot flush, you feel it coming, you've got brain fog, can't remember what you're going to say, and you're just sat there going, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. If you've got a supportive work culture and they can see that you're struggling, hey, let's take a 5-minute break. You have a coffee, we'll come back in 5 minutes. That's a lifesaver. That gives you time to save face, to go back, compose yourself, deal with your hot flush, and come back and be like, okay, great. And that to me is where your boss, you'd be like, thank you so much. That's like, that makes you want to stay in that job. That makes you want to stay in that supportive culture. So, rounding up, key takeaways. How to empower women in tech. So we've gone over role models, promoting young women. And again, this is something that you guys do tomorrow. You go talk to your daughters, you go talk to your nieces, your goddaughters. You go say, hey, tech's cool. I can build cool stuff. So can you. Mentoring. Provide mentoring and support. So if you've got women in your team, support them. Give them the option for mentoring. If they want to move up in the career, give them options. Talk to them. Removing gender bias. Updating job adverts and using gender-inclusive language. Again, super simple. Anybody in a managerial role that's looking for adverts can do that. And workplace culture. Now, this one's slightly more tricky and will take longer, but if you start now, your policies will grow. You'll be able to put a supportive female support network in place, and it will benefit in the long run. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jen. Oh, it's working. Yay! Thanks, Jen. That was amazing. So good. Questions. So we're going to run through questions now, and then we will go to a quick break. So has anyone got anything that they want to ask Jen? Yeah. Oh, I'll go back this way. Sorry, Sel. Oh, Jen.
Thank you. So from one techie Jen to another.
Hey!
I thought you were absolutely spot on then. I love that. Absolutely love that. The one thing I'd add would be when you're getting all male shortlists for vacancies, how do you handle that?
It's a tough one. Like, obviously, because tech is male orientated generally, and it is going back to the job adverts, there is only so much you can do to encourage women to tech, short of saying, if you are a woman, please apply for this role. Obviously, removing gender bias is the main one. Once you've done that and you're getting absolutely nothing, it's like having a look at where you're advertising as well. There's a lot of women in tech initiatives that will share job adverts to networks. That's a really good place to start. LinkedIn, there's loads of like networking stuff on LinkedIn. So yeah, start aiming it at women and like shoving it under the nose.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? Yeah. Okay. Calm. Indu, is that you? I haven't got my glasses on. I probably should have. There you go.
Hi, great talk. So I was thinking a lot about what you, and actually leading on from that previous question, I was thinking, in the years I've been a manager, I think I'm literally in a software developer role. I've had 2 women apply in all the years that I've been hiring. That's in the UK, by the way. In other countries, very different. But in the UK, I've only had 2. Hired one of them, didn't hire the other. How do you think we can improve that ratio? Because I know you mentioned, job ads, but looking at your wording, I use a lot of that kind of softer wording as well. It's because the type of character profiles I like to have sometimes. But how do you get more women to actually apply to the jobs?
I think it's very, very similar to the previous question. It's, again, putting your job advert out in places that women are going to see. There is going to be, there will be a point where women won't apply anyway because it's not the role for them. And again, this comes down to the ratio of like how many women there are that are looking for tech roles. If that's really low because we haven't told all the younger generation that, hey, we've got loads of cool tech jobs, then your pool's going to be really small. And if your pool's really small, it's going to be really hard. So it's, again, getting your job advert under the nose of potential candidates that are women. And that's kind of the key thing, I think.
Thanks.
Any more? Yeah. Zoe.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your talk, Jen. My question is, I'm at the pointy end of attempting to find a job in tech. Obviously, looking at a million different companies, I'm looking for very specific entry-level jobs, you know, not aiming at the senior level. I know I can't do that yet. The companies that I look at, they all say that they are encouraging women to apply for jobs. They're encouraging women who might not even meet all the criteria to apply for the job. So I'm like, yeah, brilliant. I craft my CV, craft my cover letter, you know, sweat it out, send it through. The company never even gets back. Now, if they're actually saying this on the website, is there a gap between them putting these pretty words up on the website and yet when they look through the applications, I mean, my name is very obviously female, so it's obvious I'm a woman. They're not even getting, I know this is sounding like a whine, it's not, but if they're saying that they want women in tech, they're not getting back to the women who want to go into tech, who are applying for the jobs and saying, look, I might not be a perfect fit, but I'm still interested. How can companies actually overcome that? Because from my end, I am reaching out to companies. I'm scanning every job site known to man. What else can be done?
I think that's quite an interesting one, actually. One, I wouldn't want to work for a company that doesn't reply to my email if they're specifically asking for women and you apply and they don't reply. I would be like, no time for you. And that doesn't help you in your situation at all, obviously. It's an interesting one. It depends on the company and how many applicants they get. I mean, if you've got a really high-profile role or a role that's accessible to a wider audience, they're obviously going to get a lot more applications. They've got to sift through if you're talking in the thousands, they've got to sift through those thousands of applications. Theoretically, they're never going to have time to reply to every single one. I honestly think that's a myth, and I do think people will have time to reply to every single email, and they should. So the fact they're not either indicates that it's a really, really wanted role, or that, yeah, they're not putting effort into replying and saying at least, hey, we've got your job ad, or we've got your application, like we're processing it, you may hear back in whatever time. I mean, that's just common courtesy generally, but yeah, it's kind of down to the company a bit. I don't think there's anything you can do from an applicant to make your job stand out other than being you. I know it sounds really wishy-washy, but it is down to the company and it is poor manners not to reply to people.
Cool, thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay, any on the live stream? Any questions? Okay. Oh, you awake, Aaron? Did you? Okay, cool, awesome. Thank you so much for that, Jen. Okay, we're gonna go for a quick break. Probably should we just do 5 minutes? Dave, you do the screen thing.
to people in all parts of the world with disabilities or not. What?
Sorry, Bruce. I just need to make sure that your thing's on. You. I mean, we can hear you. The live streamers really want to hear you.
They don't.
Sorry, they should. They really, really do.
Give me the other mic.
Do you want the mic? Can you
Yeah.
put that one on, Vickery, please? Sorry, Bruce.
I won't be able to gesticulate now because I've got a clicker and a thing. All I care about is keeping the web and software generally open to people all across the world, regardless of the network conditions or the cost of the device they have, regardless of their disabilities or different abilities, open, accessible, democratic to all. That's all I care about. That said, this is not the talk as advertised, unfortunately. I haven't really pulled a bait and switch because it's still got the same title, because I always have such a fluffy title that I can stick anything into it. The reason it's a bait and switch, or it isn't, is because there's something going on in the software world now, right now, this week, that is really, really urgent, but it isn't being reported on because it's very niche, but then you lot are weird geeks. And I need your help, which is why I've pulled this bait and switch. It's not. If you accuse me of pulling a bait and witch, it's no such thing, so shut up. So whose web is it? Anyway, it's a nice title, but it requires considering. This is, of course, Sir Uncle Timbo. I'm allowed to call him that because once, and this was in public, so there were witnesses, he asked me to sign a copy of the HTML5 book that I wrote. It's not as cool as it sounds because he had no idea who I was. I sat next to him by accident. I went, oh, I wrote this. And he went, okay, sign it then. Presumably to work out what my name was. But anyway, I call him Sir Uncle Timbo. He's a local boy. Well, he isn't. He was born in Oxford, but both of his parents were from Birmingham. So he could be here tonight watching on the stream. So Uncle Timbo said on the 20th anniversary of the web, I'm not going to read all the slides out, by the way. They're online already, and I want to get through them. Timbo said the World Wide Web went live on one computer. The simple setup demonstrated a profound concept that any person could share information with anyone else anywhere. And he made it for physics papers. I'm going to do that lazy speaker thing of asking for a show of hands. In the room, who in the last 48 hours has visited a website? Wow, you are geeks. Who has visited one that was, I don't know, some kind of social network, I don't know, Facebook or LinkedIn or something like that? Okay, cool. Who has visited one that is mostly images? I don't know, like Flickr, Unsplash, Mike Ellsmore, sexypics.org. You're not confessing to the latter, just an image-based site. Who has, in the last 48 hours, exclusively and only visited websites with physics papers on it? Guy at the back. That is because, although Tim intended it for one purpose, it has expanded into use cases that he could probably never have guessed of, and probably, quite frankly, is quite appalled by, really. But nevertheless, they deserve to be there, and they were enabled because, as he said, it evolved into a powerful, ubiquitous tool because it was built on egalitarian principles, and because thousands of individuals, universities and companies worked both independently and together as part of the consortium. The primary design principle underlying the web's usefulness and growth is universality. So, this is kind of my mantra. If you search for this phrase, it's mostly me on the web, but I truly believe this. It's the World Wide Web. It is not the wealthy Western web. It belongs to everybody, and that matters very much now because we are at a tipping point. So, for example, more people live inside this circle than outside it. Most of us here in Birmingham, a very diverse and cosmopolitan city, most of us don't really know what it's like to live in these places. The kind of physics paper architecture that we might want to build might not be appropriate to the things people there want to publish. We don't know and we can't know, which is why we make it open to enable people to do what they want. The world's changing. There's 4 billion people in Asia right now. By 2050, the UN say that will go to 5 billion. There is 1 billion people in Africa now. By 2050, that will be 2 billion. By 2100, a bit late for me, but nevertheless, by 2100, when the world population will peak at 11 billion, there will be 5 billion people in Africa. The population of the West, for want of a better term, will actually diminish. The only growing demographic is Latin American seniors. By 2100, 50% of the entire population of the world will live in one of these 10 countries. Gapminder, who are affiliated to the UN, say, at the moment, 40% of rich consumers are in the rest of the world, 60% are in the West. By 2027, imminent, that will be 50-50. Rich, by the way, is defined as $32 income per day. But the world is not yet equal. So this is the cost of mobile data worldwide. In the UK, it's 0.016% of monthly income for 1 gigabyte of monthly data. In Malawi, it's 13%. In Yemen, where weirdly I was born many years ago, 16% of monthly income for 1 gig of data. The highest average cost of mobile data is 30,000% more than the cheapest average price worldwide. The world is overwhelmingly an Android majority. These are some countries that I've been recently involved in a project with. And download speeds are incredibly low in some territories, but other ones, perhaps unexpectedly, it's pretty fast. But downloading stuff and getting things onto phone as binary blobs is a problem for many people around the world. Facebook, for example, a while ago said downloading a typical app with 20 megabyte APK could take 30 minutes on a 2G network, if it ever lands at all, because of flaky networks. When Twitter were making a light version, they said to reach every person on the planet, we need to reach people on slow and unreliable networks. Twitter Lite is interactive in under 5 seconds over 3G on most devices. Most of the world is using 2 or 3G networks. A fast initial experience is essential. Because not everybody has a sexy Galaxy phone or an iPhone. Most phones are Android, and most phones, this is on AliExpress, go for $17, $18, $20 for an Android phone. In Cambodia, where I've been lucky enough to visit for work a number of times, a cheap no-name Android tablet for $60 plus a $10 case and a 50-cent sticker set to put Khmer characters on the keyboard becomes a family computer. They're never going to have a beige box sitting on their desk, and they're never going to have a nice brushed silver MacBook. This is a family computer for millions of people. The best-selling device last year that outsold all iPhones, all anything else, was the Samsung Galaxy A12. It's a nice phone. I have one. I encourage you to get one and test your stuff on it. It's 160 quid on Amazon, so it's not cheap, but it is the best-selling device worldwide. Nothing like the stuff that I have here, a MacBook M1 or a Galaxy S2 billion or whatever it is. And this is why we in web standards world, because we believe that the web should be accessible and available to all, try to make standards to facilitate this. So we invented something called progressive web apps. They're websites plus plus. They are a website, but on a device that can handle them, they can do more. They can save to home screen. So the site's icon, rather than a browser logo, goes to the home screen. It could be tickled into life with the digits, just like you can on an iPhone. And it can open full screen for an immersive experience with no browser Chrome. It can work offline using something called Service Worker. It's much smaller initial install because you're only installing the home page and enough data. And then it gathers stuff as you go. As you go to another page, it gathers and caches that. It doesn't have 100, 200 megabyte initial download. And they are everywhere. Twitter, Original Wordle, Starbucks, Uber, Pinterest, Tinder, Spotify, and lots more. Adobe recently published a list of 12 really good PWAs. To illustrate it, here is one made by a glamorous Brummie, Stuart Langridge, make yourself known. Over there, the glamorous one. He made one called Farmbound, a nice game. Farmbound is a PWA. Here it is on Android, running full screen, interactively, works offline. Here it is on iOS, and on Opera Mini, a really old proxy browser that works on feature phones and things in sub-Saharan Africa. It works, but it's a website. So nobody gets a worse experience, and a lot of people get an app-like experience. Penny McLaughlin from Google, the PM, said, typical Android app is 11 megs. A PWA, ignore the acronym, is 700 to 900K, which is why the initial PWAs back in 2016, when we in Opera and Firefox and Chrome started implementing them, the initial early PWAs came from Asia and Africa because their developers knew the local network conditions and the local economic conditions that dictated the devices that people used. Apple followed. Something called iOS home screen web apps. Web developers will have the option to create a manifest file with its display set to standalone or full screen, serve it along with their website. If they do that, the site becomes a home screen web app. It's website plus plus, like I said with PWAs. When you tap its icon, the web app opens like any other app on iOS or iPadOS instead of opening in a browser. You can see its app preview in the app switcher, separate from Safari or any other browser. It is, by all intents and purposes, an app. It's just made with open web standards rather than with an SDK that costs $99 a year. And it doesn't have to be developed on a Mac. It can be developed on a Windows machine or a Linux machine using Notepad or Visual Studio. This chimes in very well with the initial vision of some geezer called Steve Jobs. This video will probably crash, but let's try it. So Steve Jobs said in 2007, I'm going to switch to VLC because that doesn't break it. Hopefully there'll be sound, but I have put subtitles on.
What about developers? What about developers?
Can you hear that?
We have been trying to come up with a solution to expand the capabilities of iPhone by letting developers write great apps for it, and yet keep the iPhone reliable and secure. And we've come up with
Do you hear
a
it?
very solution. Let me tell you about it. So, we've got an innovative new way to create applications for mobile devices. really innovative. And it's all based on the fact that iPhone has the full Safari.
For fuck's sake.
We heard that.
It's because I'm bitching about Apple and I'm using a Mac, isn't it? Okay, so Jobs said when the iPhone was initially announced, you don't need an SDK, you don't need anything, you can go live immediately because iPhone apps will be written using HTML5. They'll be served from your server with no App Store process, no weird, ponderous update mechanism. Just what Jobs intended. However, there was a problem. There were not enough APIs in Safari as time went by. So Apple said they didn't want to implement some of them. That is entirely legitimate. If Apple don't want to implement Web Bluetooth in Safari or Web MIDI in Safari, that is entirely their commercial decision, I think. And mea culpa, in standards land, we got it wrong. So for example, geolocation and I think WebRTC, the ability to access the camera and the microphone, we should have specified that this would only work on HTTPS. We didn't. It obviously was a bad decision to allow individuals' physical location data to travel around the network without security. We changed that, but I can totally buy why Apple might not want to implement some of the more arcane APIs in Safari. And it is a legitimate commercial decision. My dad, Dawkins rest him, he would never, for example, use banking apps. He didn't trust them. He would rather ring up a temp and quote his credit card number on the phone. And this, but anyway, but whatever. So my dad would have been the kind of person who would react well to use this browser. It's really private and secure. Maybe it won't do some weird shit, but it will keep your stuff secure. And that's a legitimate way to market and a legitimate commercial decision for them to make. I get that. But they shouldn't stop anybody else implementing these APIs. A lot of people said, oh yeah, well, if Safari doesn't do it, just use Chrome on iOS. And still, a lot of developers don't know this. Chrome on iOS is not like Chrome anywhere else. Firefox on iOS is not like Firefox anywhere else because Apple's rule is any apps that browse the web, like a browser, must use the appropriate WebKit framework and WebKit JavaScript. The same thing that's inside Safari. There's an illusion of competition on iOS, but it is merely an illusion. Anything that browses the web on iOS must use Apple's WebKit, and that will not implement many of the APIs you need for modern web apps. And this situation continued and continued and continued until a plucky gang of hunks called the Fab Four said, we will take this no longer. Very William Wallace of us, actually. Stuart and I can't speak for the other two, at the time they had to remain anonymous because they couldn't make web apps, they had their business depended upon the App Store. And Apple have had a reputation of retaliating people who criticize them by chucking their business out the App Store, which is effectively cutting off your business. So the two of them were anonymous, now they are no longer, but at this time they were anonymous, and they were in Australia, they were British citizens. Stuart and I, we take our philosophical underpinning from the payment machine in the multi-story car park near the Big Walk on Wrottesley Street. It's closed now, but the car park's there. And that told us change is possible. So you can check it. It's there. I visit it every week. It's like a little shrine. So these two fellas in Australia contacted us through a mutual on Twitter and said, we've just been talking to the Australian government because they are looking at abuse of monopolies on the mobile ecosystem. And did you know that the UK government is doing the same, and would you guys care to join us? And we went, yeah, right, sounds like a laugh, because what sounds more like a laugh than talking to the monopoly regulators? So we started this group called Open Web Advocacy. We wanted an end to the Apple browser ban. If Safari doesn't want to implement some stuff, fine. But let other browsers go there and let consumers choose. Allow those other browsers to integrate with the system to go full screen, talk to Bluetooth, talk to NFC, etc., just like native apps can. And allow web apps equality with native apps. So don't say on Safari, on iOS, only native apps can receive push notifications. There's no reason why browsers can't. They do on Windows, they do on Android, they do on Linux. We got invited to meet the Competition and Markets Authority. There we are with one of the less anonymous members, Alex Moore, at the CMA's office. The CMA's logo is pretty dull because they're government, but I'm like a bit of a designer in my spare time, so I made them a better logo that reflects their best of Britishness. And the CMA said, yeah, actually, browsers are powered by an engine. Apple bans alternatives to its browser engine. This restriction seriously inhibits the capability of web apps, depriving consumers and businesses of the full benefits of this innovative technology. And they said, we're going to investigate this. Apple went, no, and appealed and got the investigation shut down. The CMA appealed back. Apple failed to appeal. It's been reopened last month. In the meantime, Stuart and I decided to go on a philosophical tour. So our next stop was the EU. The EU were writing the Digital Markets Act. Again, not terribly exciting, but I made a logo. Get your eyes on this. Look at that, the Digital Markets Act. And this said that I don't think they'd realized that it wasn't just Android apps and iOS apps, that there was web apps that could compete with both. So the DMA said, blah, 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 blah. But basically, if you are a gatekeeper, a big organization with kind of quasi-monopolistic control in the EU, you're not allowed to self-preference your own stuff. I.e., if you are Android, you can't self-preference Chrome. If you're Safari, you can't self-preference. If you're Apple, you can't self-preference Safari. If you're Microsoft, you can't self-preference Edge. And this isn't just the EU fighting Apple. They announced the DMA 2 years ago. 6 months ago, they announced who would be the gatekeepers: Alphabet, Amazon, Apple, ByteDance, Meta, Microsoft. And they announced which one would be the core services that were going to be regulated. Apple didn't like this. So they recently, January 25th, they announced changes to the App Store. These are arcane, complex, and my tiny brain can't remember all of them. They were allowing third-party browsers, but with such elaborate conditions and caveats that it's going to be really difficult for anything other than massive companies to put their browser onto iOS. Our chums in Mozilla who make Firefox said, we're still reviewing the technical details, we're extremely disappointed. The effect of this would be to force an independent browser like Firefox to build and maintain two separate browser implementations, a burden Apple themselves will not have to bear. If you're weird and you want to delve into this, I'll post the link to the slides, and all of these are links to further explanation. So you can see I'm not lying. And with third-party app stores, there are other similar rules and regulations which are couched in the language of protecting our users, security, but they don't actually bear scrutiny. And it's quite possible that they are illegal. Not a product. It stands for I am not a lawyer, by the way. Now, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't tell you for definite. Some of you people, I can't tell you for definite whether these things are illegal or not, but doubtless litigation will occur. And the thing is, if you are a monopolist, literally earning billions of dollars every month from charging 30% for people to be in the App Store, any kind of delay is a win. Because if you can force companies to litigate and take months and months and months with hugely well-paid lawyers arguing weird shit about browsers, every month this is happening, you're clawing in billions by charging developers 30% for the privilege of being in your app store. Remember that an entrenched monopolist wins just through delay. Nothing was happening with progressive web apps, but Safari 17 beta came out recently, and people noticed they seemed to be broken. People asked, stumm from Apple. Beta 2, broken. Beta 3, broken. So we started to make a fuss in the press, and eventually Apple went, yeah, well, it's really, really hard what the DMU wants, so the Digital Markets Act wants. So we had to remove the home screen web apps feature in the EU. Home screen web apps is what Apple called progressive web apps. EU users will be able to continue accessing websites directly from their home screen, but instead of being a full screen app with lots of permissions, it'll just be a browser tab. But a minimal impact to their functionality. And this was part of the work to comply with the DMA. Effectively, the DMA made us wreck progressive web apps. On the 30th of February this year, Bob Woodward from the Wall Street Journal asked, does the DMA require Apple to remove web apps? The reply by Dieter DMA, who definitely did not make up, was, fuck no, they're lying shitbags, lol. Of course, this didn't happen. Apple have taught me that I can say any old nonsense if I pretend it's to prevent privacy and security violations and to prevent a Chrome monopoly. But if anybody were to ask the EU, did you require Apple to do this? They would say no, and I can prove this to you. So Apple is saying minimal effect to people who have web apps installed on their iOS devices. Let's examine that claim. Push notifications. Push notifications came to iOS almost exactly 1 year ago, to great fanfare. If you have installed something to your home screen, you can get a push notification. And this is really important for web apps. Imagine a social network that can't push messages. But it only works for things installed on the home screen. So if Apple are taking away the ability to install stuff on the home screen, web apps can no longer receive push notifications, just killing a whole swathe of functionality and killing businesses. The badging API, it's this thing where you can put like a number of unread messages or whatever on the logo on the home screen. This will go because this only works if you have push notifications, and push notifications will no longer work because the home screen apps no longer work. Imagine an email web app that can't tell you how many new messages you've got. Just wrecks whole businesses. Games need full screen. Apple have solved that. Safari Beta 17.4 says, yeah, we fixed multiple issues by disabling support for the full screen API. Yeah, I mean, it's like burning down the village to save the village, isn't it? And another thing is storage. Browser tabs and home screen PWAs store stuff in different places. So when next week Apple turn off all of this stuff on iOS, if you were logged in to a progressive web app on the home screen app, because that will switch to being a browser tab, any saved data you had in IndexedDB, local storage, media keys, session storage, service worker registrations, and cache origin private file system will be nuked, and all of your data will be gone in the EU. Even worse, home screen apps, because the user had installed them, indicating and demonstrating trust, they could store data persistently. In Safari, in a tab, if you don't visit that site in 7 days, all of the data is wiped out. Imagine a note-taking app that just erases your data. Perhaps even worse, literally nobody knows about this. This information was sneaked out in a grudging update behind a closed accordion button last week. This is Safari Beta 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry, it's iOS 17.3, iOS 17.4. Notice that Microsoft and Android, also designated as gatekeepers by the EU, did not remove their PWA abilities. So when Apple say they were required to, why would Microsoft and Android not have the same requirements? The answer is they were not required to. It was a lie. Luckily, the EU talks to interested parties, talks to all the stakeholders. That's right and proper. It doubtless talks to Apple, doubtless talks to Google and Microsoft. It even talks to Stuart and me. So we were asked to brief them about the effect of this, and I met a really interesting chap out of Estonia. His name is John Osbey, and he runs a company called Crypt.ee. It's basically a super private way for journalists to keep notes that are only on their device. They never get sent out to the cloud, etc. And he was telling the EU about his journalists who are on the front line in Ukraine in the war. Maybe there isn't internet. They're on iOS, they're taking notes using his app. When they get back to being connected, they always download the latest betas, download the latest version of the OS, because it's vital for them to have the most patched and secure version. If they go away for more than 7 days, all of their notes, all of their photos, all of their data will be hosed. So I said to John, well, why don't you just make a native app? Because then that would solve the problem. I'm not going to read all of this, but he said deniability. If you buy or download a native app from an app store, somebody knows about it. If you've just got a progressive web app, you just delete it and erase your browser history. And for somebody in a life-threatening situation, like a journalist or somebody in an abusive partnership, that ability to completely hose a thing and there be no record of it ever existing is vital. And John said the App Store is a centralized authority. Apple can and often does bow to pressure for foreign governments. And he cited Apple bowing to pressure by the Russian government to not allow an app that was created for Navalny and the opposition to exist on the App Store. Apple have a right to do what they want on their own App Store. Of course they do, but they shouldn't be allowed to hose stuff that chooses not to be on their App Store. And John mentioned slow approval and update cycles. If you make a change to your progressive web app, the next time your user opens it, they get the change. You don't have to upload stuff through an arcane process, wait for approval, wait for that to be notified to the user, them download it, maybe they can't because they have no internet. You might not care about these use cases, but some people do, and they have a right to be allowed to care about them, I think. There's also people who make web apps that are not allowed in the App Store. They could be fetish stuff, they could be porn stuff. Apple have a right not to want those in their store. But I don't think they have a right to dictate to the world that those things should not exist. Particularly as they say, the App Store is curated. If it's not for you, for everything else, there's always the open internet. We provide Safari for a great web experience too. So, what happens next? No idea. Can't believe you laughed at that, you monsters. Poor mutilated Bambi. Do you know how long it took me to make this today? When I should have been like 15, man. What next? I don't know. What we can do as OWA, Open Web Advocacy, is gather data. Because the EU, okay, I'm Bruce Lawson and I have a view of how the world should be. But the EU do not come to me and say, hey, Bruce, tell us what your worldview is and we'll make sure it happens. Curse you, Nigel Farage. So the only way to influence the EU, and jokes aside, is absolutely right. The only way to influence or hope to sway their decision is present them with facts and data. So Apple said this will have minimal impact to their functionality, and this will affect a small number of users. So we thought, well, how do they know this? So we opened a survey for EU orgs and EU developers to tell us. And we got a great deal of info talking about a great many end users and a great deal of money and a great deal many businesses that might go down if this happens. And the EU said, we're looking into the issue of progressive web apps and can confirm sending requests for information to Apple and to app developers who can provide useful information for our assessment. This is encouraging because Apple proposes this happens on, is it March 6th, March 7th, March the 6th, a week. The EU has big teeth. The DMA is already the law, but because software is complex and changing app stores and browsers is complex, they were given 6 months from the law coming in to it starting to be actually policed. That 6 months ends and the policing begins next week. The DMA says if a gatekeeper violates the rules laid down in the legislation, it risks a fine of 10% of its total worldwide turnover. I can't remember what 10% of Apple's total worldwide turnover is, but I guarantee it's even more than Infobib gives Hannah for sponsorship. Is it? For repeat offence, the fine can be 20%. But Apple have lots of money. We found an interview with about half a dozen trainee lawyers and the recently retired chief counsel at Apple. He said Apple has a legal budget of $1 billion annually. Work out how to get closer to a particular risk and be prepared to manage it if it does go nuclear. Steer the ship as close as you can to that line because that's where the competitive advantage occurs. Apple had to pay a large fine. Tim Cook's reaction was, that's the right choice. Don't let that scare you. I don't want you to stop pushing the envelope. The video is here. You can go see it. That was their chief counsel. So all we can do as OWA is provide data to the EU and tell Apple that we see what they're doing. Tuesday, we launched an open letter to Tim Cook, telling him sabotaging web apps is indefensible. Read it. We say that we avail ourselves of our rights. This is because the DMA says that developers who avail themselves of their rights cannot have those rights taken away from them by a gatekeeper to prevent the gatekeepers making things worse. So if we avail ourselves of our rights now, before those changes come in, if they do come in, then we can argue that Apple are contravening the DMA. I am not a lawyer. But also, this gives us a chance to show the EU that Apple are lying when they say minimal effect and a low number of people. So in 2 days, we have had, how many is it now, Stuart? 4,000? 4,287 as of 5 minutes. I took the screenshot yesterday, so the numbers are wrong. It's nice, and it encourages people to sign that we have 2 members of the European Parliament, Cory Doctorow, Vercel, people from the W3C. These are individuals who work for the W3C. This is not them signing. It is nice that we have Phil Hawksworth from Netlify, who spoke here recently, and people from Mozilla and Oracle and the Financial Times. But these people are weird geeks. What makes me personally really happy is that loads of the signatories are real businesses. So here we have people I've never heard of, signed as an organization, not as an individual. The organization has decided to sign this. They have 900 coffee shops, generated sales of 3.25 billion in 2022, with 11,318 employees worldwide, and they're a leading e-commerce company in Europe. They are so concerned about this business, about these changes, that they have managed to get the whole organization to sign it. And global head of web development at Roche Diabetes Care, we're seeing a great many health orgs, because a lot of health conscious people want to store their data on their own device, so it doesn't go up into the cloud, get monetized, get used as AI training data. We're seeing lots of really interesting people, Department of Leveling Up, Government Digital Service. Did you know there was a Mormon Transhumanist Association? I didn't. But this is a great thing, because PWAs are websites plus and anybody can make them. There is no centralized app store where I can find this stuff, or that an algorithm can push stuff at me. Anybody can make this. I have no personal interest in Mormon transhumanism, but I'm really glad that those who do can publish this stuff on the open web, and those who want to can install this app on their device. I don't get to choose, just in the same way as Sir Uncle Timbo didn't get to choose whether or not Mike Ellsmore pics went up next to physics papers. So to kind of wrap up, whose web is it anyway? Well, what even is the web? I'm an English literature and drama graduate. My interest is open communication, and I think the web is like Gutenberg's printing press. Yes, it's a network, but primarily it's a social thing. It is not computers. It is not a series of clouds. The web is, and the web belongs to, these women in this African village. And it belongs to this guy, blind, walking around a campus in Toronto. And it belongs to these women I met and traveled with on a bus in Bangladesh. And it belongs to this woman in a wheelchair in Taipei. And it belongs to this guy on the metro in New York. And it belongs to you in this room. And if you don't believe me, this is what Sir Uncle Timbo said. Why should you care? Because the web is yours. It's a public resource which you, your business, your community, and your government depends. Yet some people think that the web is some sort of piece of nature. And if it starts to wither, well, that's just one of those unfortunate things. Not so. We create the web by designing computer protocols and software. This process is completely under our control. It isn't because it's under Apple's control, but what makes us in this room different from the other people I showed you pictures of is you have your feet under the table. You have a voice. Use your voice. Raise your voice. This is a picture that my daughter drew of me. She's a tattoo artist down by New Street. Quite why I'm farting Einstein. I don't know. But use your voice, please. Sign our open letter. 3 days. If you can't sign it, ask your bosses to sign it as an organization. If you can't, cool, that's fine. Encourage others to read the letter and share it. If you can't do that, that's fine. If you see somebody online or on Slack or something like that saying, well, the DMA made Apple do this, correct that misconception. Apple wants people to believe they were forced to do this by the evil EU. Apple have incredible marketing and PR. Stuart has me and I have Stuart, and and we love each other very much, but it's not quite the same as having an entire PR department. Follow open web advocacy, because you have a voice and you can help us change this, because as Sir Uncle Timbo said, this is for everyone. Thanks and snogs.
Thank you. Thanks, Bruce. Okay, we are running super short on time. So can we do like 2 questions? Yeah, 2 questions. Anyone got a question? Okay.
So this might be a really silly question, but this is affecting the EU.
Yeah.
Does that mean it affects us? As in, does it affect the UK?
Does your company ever do business in any one of the 27 countries in the EU?
Yeah. No, but I'm asking, does this specific update, will it also...
No.
Okay.
And it means that you can't test in the UK. You can't test how it will be in the EU.
Okay.
Cool. Calvin, sorry. His hand was up first.
Hi, yeah. This one might be a little bit of a strange question, but Given the fact that Apple is considering on a side-loading feature in its upcoming variation of features going forward, would it actually break the PWA to a degree in a unusual perspective, by any chance?
As far as I know, Apple's side-loading thing is only other native apps, but from third-party app stores. Do you know, Stuart? And also, an important point is that nobody knows because they haven't told us anything. They've sneaked out this information that PWAs will become browser tabs behind an accordion that was closed, but we know nothing else. It's 7 days away, and they haven't told us anything. And in the UK and in the States, you can't test this because it's geo-locked to the EU. Neither have they told us how they work out if you're in the EU. There's also people who live in Norway but work in Sweden because it's a piece of cake to cross the border. What happens then? There's people in Germany who have a Swiss phone number, but Switzerland isn't in the EU. It's a week away. So many businesses are depending upon this, and we have no information. So the I don't know is the honest answer, but it's also equally damning.
Thank you. Okay, last question. There you go.
Yeah, where can we do this open letter? I saw a QR. Was that it? But it skipped.
I should have said, shouldn't I? It's letter.open-web-advocacy.org. Thank you.
Cheers, Bruce. That's really easily memorable. Can we? That whole thing, what Bruce just said. Have we got a... Is it up on the... Was it there? No.
It is in here somewhere, because I'd have to remember...
There you go.
Oh, yeah.
There you go, yeah.
Yeah, look.
That's better, isn't it? I mean, well done for remembering. Don't think I'd get as far as letter, to be honest with you. It's been a long day. Cool, thank you very much, Bruce.
Thank you for listening.
Okay, 2 things, and then you're all free to go. I've got to take a photo from the front because this is such a big... Are you getting sweaty? I got them to turn the aircon off because I got cold.
Oh,
don't worry,
nice.
we'll stay a good couple of meters away from you. So I'm just gonna, if everyone's okay, put your hands in the air if you've had a good night. Yay, Fusion, woo! You all look like you're ready to go home. Okay, Mike Ellsmore, super duper quick. We're gonna do the draw for the competition. Thank you.
Bruce, I'm using your laptop as a laptop stand.
While Mike Ellsmore sorted that out, everyone knows afterwards we are going to the Cozy Club. You're all more than welcome. We'll be heading straight there. If you don't know where it is, grab one of the Fusion people at the back and we'll be going in stages, I suppose, after we've taken all the roller banners down and that. Has anyone got any Jardu sweets left? I didn't get any. Is there any Jardu sweets on the table? Is there some over there? Can you save me a box? I got FOMO. I've seen 2 people cracking onto the Jardu sweets. Jen and Ellie having a wonderful time here. Okay, over to Mike. Sorry, come on.
Jesus Christ. Bruce, then Hannah. Right, who wants a keyboard? Right, okay. So just going to press the magic button that does the picky thing and it will send a WhatsApp message to the person. This is how I make sure they're still here. Who has received the message? Oh, no, that was... Ooh. I just realized that was sending it to me because I was leaving it on test data, so I didn't accidentally send it during Bruce's talk. Absolute plank. There we go. Anyone got a message? Pardon? No. You're getting a re-roll.
Oh.
No, re-roll. You want it in tech mids. Sorry. There we go. There we go. One more. Hello. Yay!
Yay!
There we go. Thank you very much. If anybody goes to the Discord and says thanks for all the fish, I will be giving you lots of credit to fuck around and find out for yourself. Play around and find out for yourself.
Thanks, Mike. Oh, I've got 2. Woo! I got the power. Someone needs to take these off me. Okay, thank you very much for coming this evening. I've loved it. The next one is in May or maybe June. We have got Max from GitLab. We've got Dana from The Economist. And we've got some other wonderful, wonderful speakers. The event date will be up ASAP. Hope you can all make it. Thank you for coming this evening. Have a great night.